Welcome to Rehash, a Web3 podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rehash. I'm your host, Diana Chen, and in this episode, we'll be chatting about the intersection of DeFi and NFTs, some innovative ways to build more utility into NFTs, and the future of Web3 as DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, and other concepts in Web3 start to merge together. And we'll be chatting about all of these things with Ben Lakoff, co-founder of Charged Particles, and their newest generative NFT project, Particlon. Welcome to the podcast, Ben. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Diana. Excited to be here.
I'm super excited to talk to you because it's been almost, I think, 1 year exactly since I had you on the Unstoppable podcast and first had the chance to talk to you about charged particles. And so much has happened over the last year. So we have a lot to get to today.
Man, this place is like a time warp. I think also with COVID, like my concept of time and years has been totally skewed, but that is absolutely wild. It's been a year. So yeah. Excited. Lots has happened.
Totally. Before we get into all of that, though, for listeners who aren't familiar with you, can you just give a quick sort of TLDR about what your background is and how you initially got into the space?
Sure. Name is Ben Lakoff. TLDR is I got into crypto in 2016 via angel investing, went full-time in 2017, did a lot of angel investing advising and met Rob Secord, the original founder of Charged Particles, June 2020. And both of us decided to go full-time on Charged Particles in October of 2020. And Charged Particles is an NFT protocol that allows you to take your NFT and give it a smart wallet so it can hold other assets in a programmable way. So ERC20s, fungible tokens, or ERC 721, and soon 1155, so non-fungible tokens. So that's been the core of my focus for coming on 2 years at this point.
Wow. Okay. So for people who maybe aren't familiar with this concept of an NFT as a basket that holds other NFTs and other fungible tokens, can you sort of explain how this is possible, without getting into the technical nitty gritty, but just at a high level, how can you make an NFT do this Inception thing?
Yeah, it's definitely an Inception. So, more of the technical, but also helpful to kind of understand it is that what we're doing is we're creating a smart wallet that NFT owns. So that NFT that's sitting in your wallet has its own wallet that can hold other assets. So you create this like Russian doll thing owning other things, which own other things all the way down, which is super cool and exciting.
Can you give some real life examples of when somebody might want to do this instead of just creating an NFT, create essentially a smart wallet that holds a bunch of NFTs and fungible tokens?
Yeah. So ease of transfer is like the big value prop. So for instance, next month there's a crypto conference in Croatia and we're providing the NFT gift baskets for all the attendees. So with one transfer, an NFT arrives in your wallet and it's filled with other NFTs, other fungible tokens. It's this gift basket type NFT filled with little gifts from the other sponsors or partners of the conference. So if you were to do that without like this bundle NFT basket, you would have to transfer all of these things individually. So it allows multiple things to be transferred into one thing like a basket. So you can have an entire DeFi portfolio all containerized within this NFT, and you can send it to somebody as like this Web3 onboarding pack. You suddenly, poof, you have all of the things you need to do to like know and understand Web3. And then there's other use cases like for a founder. So if you're raising funds and plan on issuing a token, you can take those tokens, put them into an NFT, transfer them to your investor, have that NFT time locked for a year. So they have their tokens, they just can't pull them out of that NFT, for up to a year. And then you can layer in different NFTs and create these vesting schedules. So very useful for teams or founders when raising funds or issuing tokens.
Very cool. Or even what I was thinking is if you had, say, all your assets and wealth stored in NFTs, or fungible tokens, any kind of crypto, you could bundle them all together into a charged particle, and say you want to gift it to your child, like in like a trust fund. You could gift it to them, and could you lock it up until, say, their 18th birthday, so they can't do anything with it until they turn 18?
Definitely, exactly. So, I mean, you could bundle all of these assets into one NFT, time lock it until their 18th birthday, send it to them or send it to a wallet that they control, and they can take that NFT, but they can't pull out the constituent assets until that time lock expires. Exactly.
Very cool. How easy is this to use? Like, if I wanted to go and bundle my NFTs together, would it just be a matter of like a few clicks to do that, or do I have to know anything technical?
It's still quite technical. I mean, our users are more sophisticated than like somebody that doesn't understand what a seed phrase is. Everything's happening on chain, so you're approving a token, you're sending the token. Every click is kind of a gas transaction. So we're live on Polygon, so it's a lower cost alternative to do those sorts of things. But no, ease of use is not quite there yet. We're definitely giving a UI upgrade to the site and the DApp right now. Not the easiest for most people, but we'll get there. And we have a API and SDK coming in the next few months, so other developers can take this protocol, this building block, and slap a different UI or different target customer and kind of create the UI that makes a little bit more sense for them.
Yeah, and I mean, in the meantime, it's a good learning experience, right? I think I like tweeted something recently that was like, I'm glad I got into the space when I did, because it's forced me to learn a lot of technical things that I'm sure, had I waited a couple of years to get in, like people in a couple of years aren't going to need to know half the things that people today need to know to operate anything.
Absolutely. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? I mean, the pro is that we understand these things on a more technical level and like the ins and outs, but the cons is because it's difficult and crappy UI that people get scammed or don't understand. And there's like fake NFTs that don't have a verified contract that, these things you can flag at the UI level very easily, but they don't exist. So there's tons of unfortunate situations that happen within the space because it is so nascent.
Very true, very true. So you guys recently launched an NFT project called Particlon that is sort of like a use case for charged particles that hopefully other NFT projects will pick up on and want to do this as well. Can you talk a little bit more about what Particlon is?
Yeah, definitely. So Particlon is the first generative drop powered by charged particles. So what this is a 10K avatar series, and we partnered with the folks at Vazi to put this together. Basically, we provided the tech, they did everything else, and including the art, which is going to be really, really incredible. But this is a 10,069 avatar collection that each avatar comes loaded with utility tokens inside of it. So we wanted this to be like the first template for other generative projects to do something a little bit different. So you can now take charged particles, like take this example of Particlon, and it's a very good use case for other projects to every single token that somebody buys can have fungible token in it, can have another NFT in it. So you think about this NFT that you're collecting on day one from the mint as being that basket, as having maybe a weapon nested inside, maybe a bunch of tokens, fungible tokens, maybe a bunch of fungible tokens that are time locked for 2 years or something. But it kind of provides this template for other generative drops to do something a little bit different and kind of experiment around in the space.
Very cool. So for Particlon specifically, the minting process is going on right now. So once people mint an NFT, they get these utility tokens. And then what do those utility tokens allow them to then do?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, we've done some innovations with the minting process. So minting is quite gas intensive. We did adhere to the ERC 721A standard, so they are lower cost. But what you're doing is minting an NFT, creating a smart wallet, and then depositing tokens into that smart wallet. So it's a little bit more gas intensive. So the first mint, if you mint 5 NFTs, the first one is like 0.02 in gas because of all of that. And then the next ones cost next to nothing. So 5 NFTs would be like 0.025. It's like exponential decrease in cost. And that's because all of the tokens for those 5 NFTs all load into that first NFT. It's easier for the user. They want these tokens to use within the ecosystem. So pulling them from these different 5 NFTs is quite gas intensive. So we figured we'd put them all in this first one, which was quite a cool innovation. Also using 721A. What these tokens equate to, like I said, we've partnered with Vazi. So this ecosystem that they're building, these tokens will be redeemable for future drops. So planning this whole gaming ecosystem with weapons. So the tokens that you get from the first mint, you can use as a redeemable token, utility token for a future drop. And then there's a bunch of more in the works ideas on how this could be used in a more interesting way within that ecosystem. But it's a really cool use case for charged particles on this larger scale of having each of these NFTs with the tokens inside of them. The tokens in this case are redeemable for future drops, but they can be used in all sorts of interesting ways within that ecosystem.
Gotcha. So basically, somebody mints an NFT, a Particlon right now, and that will come with eventually like your avatar, your weapons, like everything else you need to play in this metaversal game is like sort of the idea.
Exactly. So you get an NFT, which is like your PFP, the headpiece. In, I think, 3 months, there'll be a full 3D render. And then the tokens that you can pull from the inside will be redeemable for future drops. So you're kind of like getting these bits and pieces as they grow along. And Vazi is really strong in the entertainment space. So a number of IRL and metaverse events are planned. So they've signed on a bunch of like well-known DJs and entertainers, which it's always difficult to effectively communicate those things. But Particlon NFTs would get VIP to those events, which will be a huge value add for this community.
Very cool. How did this idea come about? And like, I'm wondering how this process was because I've always wondered what actually goes into putting something together and launching something like this because it seems like a lot to me, and especially like in your case this isn't just a 10K PFP project. Like there's also so much more involved. There's this whole game element involved. There's like these other pieces of it like weapons and like other accessories. I'd love to hear about like the behind the scenes process of how this came to be.
Yeah, I mean, well, one, these like planning processes are super fun, right? Because it's like everything's on the table. Within Charge Particles, we have a gaming guild, which has tons of really good ideas and little side project hackathon projects that incorporate really neat game mechanics into using charged particles technology. So it's a card game using charged particles that goes live later this week. There's tons of really cool stuff. So this kind of spawned from the amount of innovation and creativity that we saw within our own gaming guild. And one of our investors, Fourth Revolution, they know the Vazi guys, and they said, "Hey, we know you guys are super busy with protocol development and everything you're doing with charged particles. You should partner with Vazi to bring a PFP project to life that allows you to double down on this gaming guild and some of the cool things that are going on there." So that was kind of the initial catalyst to let's start thinking about this because we have our hands full with our own charged particle stuff constantly. So being able to partner with Vazi, who would handle all the marketing and community building around something like Particlon, and we could still leverage what we have with charged particles in our own personal networks, was extremely appealing, and especially with their entertainment and metaverse plans for Particlon. It was kind of a match made in heaven to bring these things together and launch something super special.
And when you say gaming guild, is Charge Particles a DAO?
We are. I mean, so I would classify us more as the moving to be a full DAO, but still very much centralized. So we have a governance token that's out there. Everybody that has a governance token has a vote in protocol decisions, but we're very much in the initial phases of moving towards full DAO. And what we've done is, because Charged Particles ultimately is this NFT protocol that's NFT agnostic. So whether it's gaming, music, whatever, Charged Particles has a potential use case within that niche. So we've segmented into guilds just within our Discord to kind of focus the content of the talks and efforts for that individual vertical. So gaming is one of those uses and niches that when people hear about Charged Particles, and an example that I often give is, the sword earning interest, growing in power in the game, their minds kind of go wild with the potentials of Charged Particles within the gaming niche. So no, our gaming guild is very much just a channel within our Discord, but it's a group of like-minded people wanting to push innovation within the gaming niche, leveraging what Charged Particles has built.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting because I've heard of quite a few companies recently that are thinking about decentralizing fully into DAO. And I think, I'm curious to see sort of like how that plays out, like in 5 years, if we see all of these companies like centralized companies today become full on DAOs, or if that process sort of ends up not working out and we in 5 years we're still in the same place we are today. Well, I'm curious to hear like how you guys are thinking about decentralizing and where you see Charged Particles maybe in 5 years, like as a DAO or as, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So I think decentralization is this broad scale, right? It's extremely centralized, extremely decentralized. So even if it's full DAO, fully decentralized, it has some level of centralization. There's some early investor or founder that has a big percentage of the supply that has a big voting weight. So I think this progressive decentralization playbook will evolve over time. I mean, at Charged Particles, we get really excited about the thought of using fungible and non-fungible tokens in new, unique ways of, like, you have an NFT as the governance layer and fungible tokens inside of it, which gives it kind of super voting abilities within that DAO or ecosystem. Something that's exemplified by Particlon is like that you have this NFT, which is one vote, and then you have put tokens, the utility tokens, which might be another type of vote. So I think that decentralization and decentralized governance in general will continue to evolve. And the way that we're thinking about it is it's a slow process because there are still a lot of decisions that need to be made in a more centralized manner before we can just open it up, because you end up having this organization that everyone has a say, and nobody's taking ownership or charge. So you need the product person, you need like the visionary and the strategy person at first, and then you find a use case that people know, love, and care about, and then I think we could decentralize them a lot more quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I think some people confuse decentralization with like having zero leadership. And I think what you're talking about is like that centralization piece. It's like you still need leaders in any organization. Otherwise, it's complete chaos and anarchy and nothing gets done. Right. So I like how Julia Rosenberg talks about it from Orca. She visualizes it in little pods, like little groups. And then there's leaders in these little pods and they all work together. It's not like your typical like hierarchical org structure that you see in a lot of traditional companies, but there are still leaders.
Yes, definitely. And I think these things will continue to evolve. So if it is like this guild with elected leaders of these subgroups, maybe. But yeah, it's exciting. This is why we operate in this space and get so excited about it, right? It's like evolving quite rapidly and constantly. But that's the great thing about it.
Yeah, I think one thing I like really sort of admire and think is really cool about Charged Particles is that not only have you figured out how to combine these two concepts, NFTs and DeFi, into one. And I know like some people will say like DeFi is part of everything. DeFi is part of NFTs. You know, like people trade NFTs, but you've really like done it in a really interesting, creative, and also useful way. And now you have this DAO component built in too. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on moving forward as we start to see more and more of these initially differing concepts like NFTs, DeFi, DAOs all merge together into one. Where do you see this space being in 5 years? Like, what are some cool things that we should expect to see in 5 years if we keep trending in this direction?
Yeah. Well, if we keep trending in this direction, I think everybody will burn out because of Discord fatigue and other things. But no, I mean, you spoke very accurately on kind of my vision of how this space goes, and it's that we're seeing the convergence of all of these different trends. So I think what started off just as crypto and then just smart contracts and NFTs, DeFi, all of these segments are kind of merging back into something bigger. So I think that the lines will be blurred. I think this term of non-fungible token, this unique token, needs to be replaced because look at charged particles with these different guilds. It's like blockchain gaming is now categorized under the NFT space, and that's very different from the art NFT space, which is very different from the financial product NFT space, but it's all kind of under this umbrella of NFTs. And then charged particles, shakes the globe even more. If you have a creator create an NFT with fungible social tokens locked inside of it, and also a non-fungible like super voter token NFT that's also locked inside of it. And it comes as like this little welcome to my little creator space onboarding package. So I think, I mean, in 5 years, was that the question? 5 years is a long time.
We can take it down to like 2 or 3. I know
No,
crypto time is not real time.
yeah. Well, I mean, the timeline is always kind of the hazy part, but where we're going is more decentralization, more people understanding this from like a UI perspective. It's easier, more accessible. I still meet people that have no idea why an NFT, all NFTs, any digital item that's represented by an NFT, like could have value. So I think we'll get over those hurdles. We'll have easier ways of people owning these. I think blockchain gaming will have its moment in general. True ownership of these digital items. It's something super, super powerful with gaming. Yeah, and just greater adoption of crypto in general as an asset class, as a real thing, not just this small corner of the internet that finds it funny and meme worthy.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear, where do you see blockchain gaming developing? This is coming from somebody who is not well versed in the gaming world or in the blockchain gaming world. But some criticisms I've heard is that with blockchain gaming, it's a zero sum game. So, like, some people can make a lot of money from playing Axie, but then, it's like a very small percentage. It's kind of like you say, like, oh, yeah, like you can make it as a blogger, like in the traditional world. But, like, what percentage of all bloggers actually, like, make a full-time income or a meaningful income from that, right? It's very few. So when you talk about like the ownership aspect of blockchain gaming, like where do you see blockchain gaming trending, or where should it be trending in order to really be this like not just fun but also beneficial thing for people?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things there. One, it's like the long tail, even podcasters, YouTubers, all of these things, like ease of access means that a lot more people do it, which means, there's a small percentage that do very, very well, and then a greater percentage that don't do very well at all. So I think that's just kind of the case. And I don't think like putting it on a blockchain necessarily changes anything in that manner. But with these play to earn, I mean, right now this is being recorded in April 2022, and play to earn is like a little overhyped. I think it's a bit of a oxymoron. Like, if I want to play, I want to play. If I want to earn, I want to earn. So the idea of like play to earn, I think, is kind of a funky one. I think it will evolve. I think there's great aspects of this that will be incorporated into something that will work. But No, I think just in general, in-game items, the ability to truly own these assets that can't be shut off by a centralized game creator, take them somewhere else, sell them on the open market, be able to collect these as you go along. And then, the play to earned-esque aspects of rewarding gamers with some sort of governance token that has a say in future decisions of that gaming platform. I mean, it just plays into this, like, the amount of time I spend on this thing, using this product, loving this, and being an ambassador for it. I should be able to have some sort of ownership interests in it as I accrue more value for that platform. So I think this is where, like, blockchain gaming can be very, very powerful. But again, it's like early stages on this. And again, it'll continue to evolve and grow and change. And the assumptions that we think are valid now will be obsolete. And that's part of it.
For sure. Yeah. And, I hate to end on a downer note, but I also want people to be realistic about the space. Like, we are still very new and anything can happen. It is a risky investment, I'm not just talking about like buying crypto, but also working in the space and sort of making this your livelihood. If Web3 were to completely cease to exist in 5 years, why would that be, in your opinion?
Great question. I ask a very similar one, but that is a great question. I should have come prepared. I think, like, the low-hanging fruit answer here is something about regulations, but I actually don't think that's the case. I think there's like too much to lose from a regulatory standpoint. There's this game theory intra different countries of, like, if the US bans it, then Singapore or some other country just raises their hand and they say, hey, we're good. Come over here and innovate here. We'll take that tax revenue in the future. So I don't think it's that. I obviously believe Web3 is here to stay. I do think that lack of thoughtful regulation could really delay what Web3 could end up being longer than it should. So I don't think regulation will necessarily crush it, but I think lack of thoughtful regulation, not fully understanding what this is, what it could be, could significantly delay its arrival. I mean, this is mid-April, so, like, just doing my taxes and hearing my friends talking about taxes, like, taxes alone are such a disaster on this, and I've lost many nights of sleep and gone through so many freaking spreadsheets that my eyes bleed. My strategy now is just literally to never sell, like, never selling, never staking, never doing anything. I'm just going to be the most boring crypto person ever, never touch anything, because it's been such a disaster. But yeah, I think lack of thoughtful regulation would be a big hindrance to the space.
I totally hear you on the taxes pain. I just went through that as well. It took us spent like a month trying to figure it out. And then we were like, man, we really should have hired somebody for this. But then it was like too late by that point. So we're like, okay, I'm sure we ended up paying
somebody
way more than we had to. But at that point, we were just like, we have to be done with this. And it's still a pain.
I hired somebody and paid them a lot. And it's still like, I mean, I'm convinced it would have been better for me to train up a friend who's unemployed and has some time and, like, just pay them $50 an hour to go through these spreadsheets and, like, figure it out for me. Would have been way less stress, way less money, and I probably would have had a more accurate, like, estimation where I am now. Yeah, so
I'm sorry to hear that. But I was going to say on the regulatory point that I think also it's not just, I'm totally with you on, like, lack of thoughtful regulation is going to be, like, potentially very detrimental to this space. But I think it's also like the delay in creating any regulation. So I think the longer that regulators delay in just saying something about this, I think that's actually quite detrimental to the space too, because people are going to be scared to do things, launch a token, start a DAO, like, do the things that they want to do for fear of getting into trouble down the line for something they did in the past. Or you're just going to have bad actors who come in and they're like, F it all, like, we're just going to do whatever because there's no regulation, and then people potentially get harmed. So, I mean, I definitely do believe we need regulation. I think that's the only way that crypto is going to go mainstream, because there's just enough people in this world, or at least in this country, who are just very risk averse. But yeah, I think my hope is that the regulation comes soon, but not too soon before they have a chance to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the reality whenever I talk to founders, if you are risk averse, like there's no amount of operating within Web3 without some level of risk. So you have to have this minimal acceptable risk that you're willing to have by even being in the space. And like you said, some people just aren't okay with that. And that's okay. But if you had a little bit of regulatory clarity and not these laws from the 1930s and 40s, but revamped for today's age, then you could onboard a lot more innovators and operators into the space, because those risk adverse ones, and you could really, really get some great innovation. So it for sure is holding us back. But like you said, it's got to be thoughtful. Otherwise, it holds us back quite a bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Ben, about anything we talked about or anything else you want to share in the space that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah. Well, so you touched on it a bit, this theme of like wag me or we're so early. I think it's important for people to understand that we are early. A lot of the things we're talking about definitely demonstrate the earliness of us in this space. But that doesn't mean that everything you touch now will 10x in price or whatever. There's a long tail of things that will expire worthless, even though they are early in the space. But no, just for listeners, get involved with the communities that resonate with you or that you care about. Follow them on Twitter, jump into their Discords or Telegram groups. If you're looking to get involved in the space, in these groups, raise your hand. Offer whatever your superpower is. There's probably a need for somebody like you at some organization. So the power of just showing up, raising your hand and saying, hey, I think I can add value and help with this, can go a really long way. So highly encourage any of those listeners who are on the fence about contributing or jumping in. It doesn't have to be a 50-hour a week, 10-year commitment. It can be 5 hours a month, whatever. But it's a good way to dip your toe in the water, understand what's going on here, and stay away from like the next hot tip sort of thing, and understand like at its core what's happening in Web3 and why we get so excited about it.
What a great note to end on. And if that struck a chord with you too, listeners, go and check out the episode with Regan O'Malley. It'll either, I don't know yet if it's going to come before this episode or after, but it'll be part of the season 0 of the podcast. She is, do you know who she is, Ben? She's this like girl who contributed to Index Co-op, and her first week in Web3, she like went into the Index Discord, just literally said, "Hi, I'm Regan. I'm a student at USC." And people reached out and she got onboarded, and they like all just like boosted her Twitter. She got to like almost 5,000 followers in her first week in Web3, and just completely blew up. And I was like, how did you do this? Like, what's your secret? And she's like, I literally just went into Discord and I said hi. And that's kind of like what you're saying, is just go in these Discords of the communities or projects that speak to you and say hi, introduce yourself. Like that's really how you get started. There's no really sophisticated secret sauce beyond that. So I'm really glad you ended on that note.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Ben, for taking the time. Before you go, just tell people, where can they find you if they want to connect with you personally? And then where can people go to learn more about charged particles and Particlon?
Sure. Well, always a pleasure. Great to see you. I can't believe it's already been a year and we're still having the same conversation. So we'll do it in another year and see where that one goes. And like, we'll be able to see the growth of the space and ourselves over these years. But you can find me at Twitter, probably the easiest way. So at Ben Lakoff, BenLakoff. Charged Particles is at DeFi NFT. Great handle, I know. Got that in February 2020. And Particlon is at Particlon _XYZ. So PARTICLON _XYZ. But Yeah, really appreciate it. And my DMs are always open. If anybody is interested, always happy to chat.
Amazing. Thank you again so much, Ben. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Rehash. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to get involved in helping shape next season of the podcast, including nominating and voting on your favorite guests, go to rehash.mirror.xyz to join our crowdfund. And don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe to help us get this podcast heard by as many people as possible. Thanks for being part of this community, and I can't wait to connect with many of you in Discord and Twitter soon.